Residential Resilience Action Team meeting. Nick, if you don't mind, going to the next slide. Okay, so we have a full agenda as always. We'll do some background on how we became the Flood Task Force and what we are, our meeting schedule and some other background about the task force. We'll also update on the action plans that we've been working on since November of last year. We'll give an update on our insurance action plans that we have kind of had a progressive conversation about, and hopefully we'll get closer to closing that discussion now. And then we will move into our FY23 budget status and then talk about our FY24 budget requests. And then we'll close out our meeting and let you have your day back. Next slide, please. So the task force was started by the city administrator in September of 2021. This task force reports directly to the Deputy Mayor of Operations and Infrastructure, Lucinda Babers. And we have two co-chairs, the CEO for DC Water, Mr. David Gaddis, and the director from DOEE, Mr. Tommy Wells. So this meeting, this task force kicked off our meetings in November of 2021, and all of the proceedings are available to the public. The public is invited to come to all the meetings, as well as any information that's discussed with this task force is posted on the website, which is dcfloodtaskforce.org. That's dcfloodtaskforce.org. You'll also find resource information there, as well as all the schedules, meeting minutes, and recordings. Next slide, please. So the meeting schedule for our task force is very frequent. We meet as a full task force every other month on the third Wednesday. Our next full task force meeting is coming up on Wednesday, September 21st. These action team meetings are the two working groups that we have established. We meet every month. Residential Resilience, which is the meeting that we're having today, meets on the second Tuesday of every month, and Governance and Coordination is on the second Friday of every month. Our final report for the Flood Task Force, we're changing that date. It's adjusted from November 2022. We'll announce the new date later in this presentation, and then we will update this slide for our future meetings. But that action plan of 9 categories will be finalized as a report according to the new due date. The post-final report, when we are done with presenting all of the action plans as a plan, we will have meetings annually to track the progress of the action plan, as well as to continue the discussion for budgeting purposes and the priority of our budgets. Next slide, please. So we do have 2 action teams, as I mentioned. Residential Resilience is what we're here for today. We cover categories 1 through 4, and the Governance and Coordination cover categories 5 through 9. Our next Governance and Coordination meeting will be on Friday, October 14th. Next slide. So today we have an update on our action plans, and we will have Nick Bonard from DOEE. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Monty. So for those of you who were at the Governance action team meeting, this will sound a little bit familiar, but I do want to make sure everybody on the residential side kind of here's what's going on. Nick, if you want to go to the next slide. Basically we're in the home stretch here of the Flood Task Force. We have 3 full task force meetings left. One next week, which is we've highlighted in blue, then November 16th, and then January 18th. And then as a side note, on that January 18th, you all should have received an email with a letter from the city administrator extending the task force so that we can have this meeting on January 18th and then also submit a final report in February. So this is all, so we do have approval. It's kind of all mapped out. And what that will allow is that we have enough time to go through this presentation, then member comment, then public comment process for each of the action plans. And so those action plans are kind of divided into 3 batches. The first one, we first talked about in, May. First presented to the full task force in May, and then in July, the task force voted to send it out to public comment. We've received public comment, and now in this upcoming task force meeting, the task force will give their kind of final approval on that action plan, on all of the action plans in batch one. And what that means is, we're not going to expect any substantive changes to those action plans between the date of approval, so September 21st, and in February when the final report gets released. And so, so then the batch two, which we will, there'll be final approval in November, and then in January, final approval will be for batch three. So they're all, batch 1, 2, and 3 are kind of like on staggered schedules, all going through the same process though. So just to get a little bit more into detail with this, Nick, can you go to the next slide? So to remind folks, for batch one, these are, right, so these are the 5 action plans that are going to be, going out for final approval in a week. The ones that are highlighted in blue are the ones that are coming out of this action team, the residential resilience. And actually 6.3, it's italicized because we're actually not going to vote on that action plan because we actually, the Resilience Act was already passed. So that one's kind of done. So there'll be final approval on September 21st. And just so everybody knows, I mean, we have received some public comments. I'll be sending an email probably tomorrow, with links to the updated versions of the plans and links to where you can find the comments. But there hasn't, I think the biggest change that I think we can talk about here is that the Flood Smart Homes program, so 3.1, the biggest change here is we've heard a lot of comments saying that this needs to be opened up now for interior flooding, homes that are experiencing interior flooding instead of just 100 and 500 year. So we're making that shift so that the money that we have, the local money that we have for flood smart homes, we're going to allow that to be used for interior flooding as well. I think that's all I wanted to say on batch one, unless there's any comments or questions on the rest of these plans. All right, so if you go to the next slide, so batch two. So there are, let's see, 7 action plans that will be released for public comment. So we're going to do final vote of batch one on September 21st, and then also on the same day, the task force will vote again, but instead of final approval, they're just going to vote to release these for public comment. So all of the action plans that you see here have gone through kind of like a member public comment or a member comment period. So we have changes in some of these, and so we're going to update the action plans with those changes, and then put them on the website and send them out to stakeholder groups. So kind of a heads up to everybody on this call, make sure that your official task force member is aware that they'll be voting to approve batch one and also to release for public comment on batch two. I don't know if, and so that, there's a bunch of different agencies that have some of these. So DC Water, DEMWA, DCRA, and HCMA. I don't know if there's any updates you all want to give on these. We're not expecting any major updates, but if there's something you wanted to add.
No, there's no updates from the DC Water side.
Okay, thanks, Salil. Okay. So that's batch two. And then batch three, you go to the next slide. Yeah, so there's actually 3 slides with batch 3, so we'll take it a little bit slow. But there's actually, I just can't remember now. I think it's like 16 action plans that are part of batch 3. And September's meeting, so the meeting in a week, is going to be it's got a lot in it because we're going to have to approve batch 1, we're going to release for public comment batch 2, and then for the first time, the task force is going to hear presentations on all of these action plans. So if your agency is listed at the right, then we're expecting you all to have a couple slides ready and present to the full task force just to give an overview of what that action plan is about. And so all of the action plans that are listed on this page are coming out of the residential resilience team. The next 2 pages are coming out of the governance team, but for this page, I think you'll note, so it's heavy on insurance because it's taken us, there's a lot to think about with insurance, and it's taken us a while to kind of think through the possibilities and come up with a general direction. Insurance, securities, and banking has quite a few action plans that they'll need to present around insurance. And then DC Water has 2, and then DOE has 1. So we'll be, folks on these calls have, I think, heard the evolution of these action plans, but this will be the first time that some of the directors and higher level leadership will hear about them. So that's why we need to present them. All right, so go to the next slide, just so everybody
Nick,
can...
before you go,
yeah, go ahead.
So what kind of, so like how long, what kind of presentation? I know we did this before, but I don't remember for the other
Yeah,
ones.
that's fine. I think we're kind of counting on like 5 minutes or less for each action plan, because if you think 5 times 16,
Yeah.
that's a lot. So I'd go for like, and I can send out some template slides, yeah, we can send out some template slides to show what we've done in previous meetings. But it's basically kind of like background, and then what are the key actions, and then is there any kind of like budget associated with it? I think those are the main items that need to be addressed. And again, we're not asking. This is just a chance to let everybody be aware of what we'll be working on, and we're not asking for like approval or anything at this point. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, just so everybody knows, the other ones that will be presented. So these are coming out of the governance group. So actually, we forgot to take off 5.2 because that's not going to be an action plan. That will be just a part of the final report. But the rest will be action plans. So process improvements between DCRA and DOE, collaboration with the federal government agencies, mapping interior flooding areas, drainage complaint processes, and then the P Street levee closure. Those are all things that we're working on. And then for batch 3, oh yeah, the next slide, the thirds, 3 of 3, these are all HCMS plans that they'll be presenting and working on. So centralized reporting, severe weather warning, and then emergency response procedures. All right. So I think that's it for the updates on action plans. I do want to just pause for any other questions or thoughts about either the action plans that you're working on or the process that we're going through, anything like that. I know it's kind of convoluted.
Yeah, quick question. So when is the batch 3 proposals, when will they be released for public comment?
Right. So yeah, so just thinking about batch 3. So we'll present them on September 21st, and then a couple days after, we'll send out the Word document action plans for member comment only, right? So they'll be sent via email, and then members will have 30 days. And so it won't be until the next full task force meeting. So September, October, November. So it won't be until November's task force meeting that everyone will vote to release for public comment. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. All right. And then I don't know. I can do the transition from here. Basically, we wanted to give our colleagues in the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking a chance to just kind of talk through how they're thinking about the insurance action plan, since I think these are probably the most complicated thing that the task force is doing. Also, one of the, I think, most important. But so I'll just give you guys a little space to update and talk about it, and also congratulate you guys on your rebrand. I like the new logo, new look.
Oh, sorry, let me unmute myself. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for the comments on our rebrand too. I'm glad you noticed. So we have so we are so as you identified there, we have 5 plans that to release. Although, as we discussed on the last meeting, 2 of them are addressing remediation, and so we obviously we won't. Well, I say obviously. I don't believe that we would move forward with both of those. I think we would ultimately pick one. And so we talked a little bit at the last meeting about how to address that, and so to do that, I have drafted a sort of a cover action plan that basically says we will it kind of identifies the work that we will do to select one of the 2 options, and then the 2 options would be appendices for that action plan. So that's one of the options that we kind of talked about last time. That involves really 3 things, I'll say. One is, there's some need to identify who's going to do the work on some of them, and make sure that's doable, or what it would take to do that. One of them is to try to get estimates of the cost of the options, and the third thing that we kind of talked about a little bit on in emails in the past week is taking a look once we pick one of those, or as we are looking to decide which one of those, trying to at least consider coordinating these plans with some kind of a plan to subsidize NFIP policies, so that low-income residents can not just get the remediation benefit, but potentially also have full flood coverage. So that's what we are looking to do for those. For some of the other plans, for the outreach plans, we've added some more metrics. For one of the remediation plans, the grant plan, there's been a fair amount of work done to add detail to that plan, and Angela will go through that in just a minute. There's the 2 other plans for risk mitigation and for enhanced coverage. Both of those are referenced to homeowners insurance coverage or renters insurance coverage. They may have gotten some cleanup tweaks, but there were no substantive changes to those from what you have seen before. So with that, maybe I'll stop briefly to see if anybody has any questions before I turn it over to Angela. Okay, hearing no questions, Angela.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to say we met with some representatives from the Rockville City, Marcus Adorazi and Heather Jinwadler. I can't pronounce her last name, but they are actually one is storm water manager, which is Heather, and Marcus is the safety risk manager. And they run similar remediation programs. So we had a really robust meeting with them, and we were able to collect a lot of good information and had the opportunity to improve and refine some of our plans. So I wanted to go through a couple of our plans that we actually kind of borrowed some of the techniques and procedures that they use to update our plan. So I will start with the grant remediation one, which is 1.7A. To that plan, we added the option for the program administrator to be able to subrogate. We also added a release language, which would hold the department or whomever's administering that program. It was a hold harmless type of an agreement.
Angela, real
Yeah.
quick, the allowing the administrator to subrogate. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's like if the administrator makes a payment and that the insurance company should have made, or it was a duplicate payment for double indemnification, it would just give us the opportunity to go back if we wanted to, if we were able to go back and collect the funds that we provided. So that was a similar position that Rockville took, and I thought that it wouldn't hurt to add it in. So we did add it in, but it could be up for discussion later on. Did I answer your question, Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Now the plan, remediation plan can choose between receiving a coupon or receiving reimbursement. So it's not just the coupon. So they have a choice. The low income claimants can have a choice between receiving a coupon or receiving reimbursements. If any claimant or participant in the plan takes or receives money from the plan, we've added in a provision that they must agree to receive information about mitigation projects or programs that the district has, mitigation techniques, information about the NFIP program, and if the subsidy program exists at that time, a link to find out information and to sign up. We did define low income in this particular iteration of the plan. We used the Department of Housing's guidelines to do so. We changed a lot of the language in there. There were some cosmetic things that we did when we put forth an anticipated or a budget amount. We clarified what we wanted to cover in that we talked about it, maybe possibly agreed on capacity where there is a water related event where a storm occurs and there causes a water related event to kind of expand outside the capacity of some of the systems that we have in the district, that would also be covered. It may not be covered, of course, by flood because it may not be necessarily a flood. It may only affect certain neighborhoods, and then the homeowners policy wouldn't cover it because it wasn't something that was covered under their policy, maybe under the addendum, but maybe they don't have that addendum. So we added in the capacity language so that if there's an event that may be caused by negligence or whatever, or something that wasn't maybe maintained somewhere and it caused flooding in the neighborhood. We added that language in, so that would be covered as well. We added that no warranty for work provided by a third party. We added language for that so that if we provide a vendor list, we're not going to take on any, hopefully not any liability of having just suggested vendors to go to. We distinguish between what the program won't cover, negligent acts, and what remediation services won't be provided, like removal of totally heavy furniture or carpets. So we are trying to define, what the program, the extent of the remediation program, what it will cover and what it won't cover. Let's see. We clarified the limit amount of the coupons. So they can only request 3. We thought that more requests for additional coupons to be processed might be cumbersome and an arduous task for the vendors and maybe the administrators of the program. Let's see. We decided to provide a list of the vendors that the coupon participants can seek. If you choose the reimbursement avenue, you could also use the vendor list, but it's not a requirement because you're paying your own money up front and then seeking reimbursement. We decided you couldn't switch between programs. If you're on the coupon program, you can't switch back to the reimbursement program and back and forth. Let's see. We decided to coordinate it somehow with the 311 call center. And so that's something probably would have to be developed a little bit later on. We proposed an initial budget of an amount of $200,000, and we anticipated possibly that there would be 45 claims adjudicated in that amount. So those are the major changes to the grant remediation programs 1.7A. Does anyone have any questions?
Angela, thank you so much. This is Monty. I just wanted to ask, can you clarify the coupon versus the other option that you detailed?
Okay, so the coupon allows you to go to the program that's set up, go to the website and download a coupon that you can present to a vendor. And you can either get the services, let's say it's ServPro, you can present that to a vendor that's on the list that has agreed to be in the program, and they would provide the services. The vendor would then send back the coupon to the administrator for processing. If you're in the reimbursement, you would just simply go out and to any vendor, Home Depot or wherever, and just submit your receipts. So we just made a distinction with people who may not be able to afford to use any money, that they would have the opportunity to use the coupon.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Angela, this is awesome. Thank you.
You're
If I can
welcome.
ask a quick
Hi.
question.
Uh-huh.
Is there a limit on the reimbursement?
In this particular program, it goes up to 6,000. They get an initial 1,000 initially, and if they need more, they would be required to submit more documentation.
Great. And how did the city of Rockville fund it? Was it tax-based?
No, actually, it was funded by assessments to the utilities. So I think they used, and I want to make sure, I know that they had mentioned it was an assessment on one of the utilities. I'm not sure if it was the water, cable. I'm not sure which one, but they did mention it was not property tax assessments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Angela, no, I was just curious. It's awesome that you got to talk to Rockville. Is there any, can you just point out some of the similarities or, things you learned that kind of like are applicable for the plan you just talked about?
Yeah, I think one of the major things, of course, is the reimbursement program. They gave us a lot of information on their program, and in a little bit, they talked a little bit about how they ran it. And so it was it provided like a blueprint for us. They didn't have a coupon program, but they seemed to be very interested in how that worked. And one other thing, Nick, that they did provide for us, and I'll go back and talk about some of the other similarities, is that they talked about Alexandria and City of Baltimore. So I did some research on that, and we've also incorporated some of the programs that Baltimore has and Virginia has, which are also remediation type programs.
And Angela,
So the
did they have,
similar, this, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I just wanted to piggyback one more thing that is similar. Aside from being the remediation type of program, we put in a little bit more money in our pot. They had a little less money, but it was still it was still kind of a goodwill type of issuance, in that they just had to provide proof, which we're asking for. So that was a similarity. We just need proof. They said that though their remediation program could take up to 6 months to get the money back, we weren't anticipating, hopefully, that ours would take that long for reimbursement. So, and there was some other kind of similarities in that we're asking that people be able to access the web, to download the claim forms, to fill out, complete the application. So those are some of the other similarities. Mm-hmm.
and did the city of Rockville have to increase staffing to manage the program?
That's a good question. We didn't ask that, and I don't know that, but I can go back and I can ask that, Salil. Thank you. They didn't mention that they had to add more people. I'm assuming that it was absorbed within the current workforce. But I will go back and I can definitely ask Marcus. Yeah.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, does anyone else have any more questions on that? I did want to speak on one other outreach program, or two other outreach updates that we made.
Angela, I'd like to ask, just in case anybody was thinking of this question as well. Were there any limits to the number of claims, or how many people, how many residents participated in the claims that they've had so far?
Thank you. Okay, so Marcus did relay to us that their program, they allocated 50,000, and let me just see my notes. I think there was 23 out of 50,000. There were 23 claims, but they did have an amount that they did come up with. Sorry I didn't have that right at my disposal, but I remember the amount that they had used was 50,000, and I'll have to check on the amount of claimants actually, or the claims that were paid. Sorry, Monty. I'll get back with you on that.
No worries. Thank you so much. This
You're
is
quite
very,
welcome.
very helpful.
So Angela, also, wasn't it first come, first serve? So once that pot of money was exhausted, that was the end of it?
Oh, good point. Thank you, Philip Edmonds. Yes, it was like any other grant type of program, whether it's a CDA or housing voucher program. It's limited, and so it was. And so is ours. Ours is on a first come, first serve basis. Yeah. So we did change it to reflect that. Yeah. Thank you.
One of the other differences is I think, Angela, theirs was not limited to low income residents, right? Any resident impacted by the flood could apply.
Yes. Thank you, Philip. Exactly. They didn't make a distinction between low income, moderate income, or affluence. Yeah, based on affluence. So there was no distinction there. Thank you, Philip Barlow.
Angela, another factor that I was thinking about, and we've been discussing over time, was the similarities in flood conditions. Was that taken into account when discussing these points with Rockville? Did they have a similar profile of types of floods? I know we're in the same region, but just interior flooding.
Yeah, they did. I think, yeah, I they had interior flooding. I think the one thing that we didn't focus on initially that we decided to incorporate was the capacity issue. So they are concerned with the city sewers that blocked up, pipes underground that may not have been maintained that caused water intrusion into private property. So we wanted to make sure that in some ways that was addressed too. I'm sorry, did I answer your question, Monty? I'm not sure.
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
Also, Monty, it was 30 claims that they had approved. I don't know how many were filed, but the city of Rockville, during Storm Ida, they approved 30 claims and they issued $50,000. It was a total of $50,000.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Does anyone have any more questions on the 1.7A grant remediation? If not, I'd just like to give you a update on a couple more proposals, just small updates, if I still can have the floor.
Angela, you have plenty of time, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Okay, one thing that we, this is involving 1.6, the outreach proposal we put forth. We decided to have benchmarks, to establish benchmarks so that we know what our outreach, our marketing efforts are doing, how effective they may be or may not be, or what we may need to do in the future. And so we decided to first of all, research how many NFIP policies are still are out there in the market, how many private flood policies are out there in the market. So we did capture the statistics on those. And also we were able to reach out to Hartford, State Farm, Liberty Mutual, and Travelers to find out how many endorsements, water backup, sump pump malfunction endorsements that were out there in the district, that were issued in the district. So they did provide us with that information and we were able to find that information. So that was very, very interesting for us. So we do have a benchmark now that we can use to see how productive our advertising and marketing and choices are. So that was that, and that was kind of the updates for that, for the outreach. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, hearing now one more update, and this is for the mitigation premium discount program. That's 1.9A. What we did was we added other optional mitigation activities that insurers can consider if they want to add additional policy discounts. And this is not a mandatory make available provision, it's optional. So those would be covers for your windows. I think now they have flood-proof kind of sort of windows that you can install. So there was a litany of other mitigation activities that homeowners can do that the insurers can provide an additional premium discount if they choose to. And that's in addition to the mandatory mitigation installation devices we had originally had that they had to make available. They had to have that available. These additional ones, they don't have to make them available. It is their option if they wish to do so. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, I yield back. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Angela.
You're
Is there
welcome.
anyone else? Are there other presenters from Disney that are going to be talking about more insurance action plan updates?
No, I think that's it for our updates. I don't think that Philip or Sharon have anything additional to add.
That's correct. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. All right, well, we are zooming through the agenda today, thinking about the insurance, always there's more questions that I'm sure during the flood task force presentation. We'll get a lot more updates on paper so we can look through it very carefully, but it sounds great what you all have done so far. So thank you for the updates. So let's,
Monty, before you move on with, so would the residential resilience action teams like us to share all of the updated versions prior to the meeting next week?
I would say so, but I'll let Nick B and Salil and Meredith and others speak to that.
So Philip, you're asking, but I guess my assumption is that the updates that you guys were talking about would kind of make their way into the next iteration, or they would.
Yeah,
It
I
would
was just
be,
asking
yeah.
if you want to, if other members of the residential resilience action team want to review them and provide any feedback before next week's meeting. I don't even remember what day next week's
Yeah,
meeting is.
Wednesday. No, I think, well, so first of all, I'll say, like, without a doubt, we do want the members of the residential resilience team to, provide comment. But I think the way we've got it set up is there's, a specific time for that. So we'll have the meeting and, you guys will present. And then, shortly after, we'll send out all of the links to the action plans, and that'll be the chance for all of the members.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we definitely do want, comment and feedback for sure.
This is exciting to see this happen, come to fruition. I also doubt if other people will have a lot of comments, clarifying questions maybe.
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm excited to see the next iteration. I know you guys have been working on.
This presentation was very helpful. Got a lot of my questions answered on that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Philip Barlow, for clarifying that. And we look forward to seeing the updates on paper for folks to review carefully. And like Salil said, the clarifying questions will be probably what you get more than anything else. But thank you so much. Lots of great work. Okay, so we are going to talk about the FY23 budget status and then also the FY24 budget request. Meredith Upchurch from DOE.
Thank you, Monty. Yeah, so this is where all of these plans that we have been putting together will come together and see what money we have, see what money we need to ask for. Next slide, please. And if you were in Friday's meeting, this is the same update as on Friday. So hopefully everyone knows a little bit about the district budget cycle. Our FY23 budget starts on October 1st in a few weeks. I've listed here some of the flood-focused projects that are continuing in FY23 from current years, previous years, and some of the new projects. And this really shows some of the work that we have been doing. Through this task force, we were able to get some of the project ideas that have come out of this task force into the budget. So Flood Smart Homes installations is a big one. Some continuing work in Watts Branch, flood signs and flood warning sensors, some new park studies and park designs as well to help manage flooding. So we do have a lot of work that is ongoing to support flooding, both residential assistance and infrastructure projects and modeling. So we'll use the projects that we've got in FY23 as a baseline to then see what we need to take and what budget requests we need to put into FY24. So let's go to the next slide. And these projects that I've listed, it's not an all-inclusive list. It's just a sampling of the ones that we we could most quickly think of. So the FY24 budget planning calendar starts very soon. District agencies are already starting their planning for FY24 officially. That generally kicks off after the new year starts. By the end of November, agency budgets need to be pulled together. And then over the next few months in the winter is when the Office of Budget and Planning and Office of the Mayor reviews and revises agency budgets and puts it all together as the city budget and sends it over to council, who does their own review and revisions and hearings through the course of the spring. So generally by the summer, the budget is finalized, and then we get into the transition so that the FY24 budget would go into effect on October 1st, 2023. But what that means is we need to be formulating all of the FY24 budget requests now. I will also mention that there are lots of federal grant opportunities that have been coming almost continuously from different agencies. One in particular I've highlighted here is from FEMA, the Building Resilience Infrastructure and Communities and Flood Hazard Mitigation and Flood Mitigation Assistance grants. Those are actually due in January, but HCMA is collecting ideas. Their deadline was yesterday. I'm not sure. Oh, Remesia, you are on here. Do you want to say anything about the FEMA grants?
Hi, Meredith. Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. We did reach out to individuals who needed a bit more time to provide project ideas. So if you are one of those individuals that also need additional time, please reach out. Right now, we're collecting ideas until the end of the week. So that's what we have. But we're collecting those and we'll be reaching out to the full group with the updated list of what we received to date once we have that full listing. So thank you for those who've asked for a bit more time. And thank you for the opportunity that the task force has presented. And we will have more to come in the upcoming weeks. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And there are other federal grant opportunities. I know there's various working groups amongst the deputy mayor groups and within individual agencies who are looking for those other infrastructure funding opportunities or other federal grant opportunities. Significant amount of funding is coming through federal budgets. So as we see ones, we will share it with the group. Yeah, but there are groups set up to identify projects. Okay, so that's the calendar there. Let's go to the next slide. We can talk about the process. Yeah, so for the task force, we want to be able to use the task force to help elevate and prioritize projects that have come out of the task force. So whether it's providing the funding for the insurance programs or funding for an infrastructure project or homeowner assistance or emergency response, we want to essentially create a slate of budget from the task force to show the importance of the work that everyone is doing to help mitigate and protect city residents from flooding. So for the budget requests, those are each agency's responsibility. That does not change. But we will try to consolidate, whatever you tell us, we will consolidate into this request so that the task force can provide that additional support for the request. So some of the, we've identified some continuing projects in FY24 where we will ask for additional funds to either continue those projects or do more on those projects. We've identified some new projects for FY24, such as the backwater valve program, some resilience studies in neighborhoods where there has not been a study. And right now we're taking this information from the action plans. So that's the importance of putting your budget estimates in the action plans so that we can consolidate this into the overall task force requests for budget. And if there's anything that's not showing up in the action plans, please feel free to send it my way, to Nick, to Alan Prop from the DEMWA. We're all trying to pull this information together. So any questions on how we're gonna do this, what we're looking for? I think for the overall task force, we'll start talking about budget at the task force meeting next week. And that we are essentially doing a call for what will be a budget request in support of flood mitigation. And then by November's meeting, we should have our identified projects together so that the task force can give official support to those budget requests.
Maybe I'll just add,
Yeah.
you know, as far as, so we heard from Director Wells at the last meeting that he wanted to make sure that by September, this meeting, that the task force will have heard kind of like all of the activities that that the task force wants to promote. And that's all because of the kind of like upcoming budget. So even though we won't have final approval of the action plans until January, we are going to have had presented in some form or fashion all 30 something action plans, batch 1, 2, and 3. That they've all been presented by September, and so then the idea is that as individual agencies are going through the budget process, that they can point to the task force and point to the task force's support for those items, so that they can kind of hopefully rise to the top. And I think we'll work with Alan and his team from DEMWA to make sure that and other deputy mayors that as budget priorities come from the agencies and then go to the deputy mayor group, that there's some awareness of what has been kind of flagged by the task force for support. So that's how I'm just kind of repeating some of what Meredith said, but just maybe in a different way. So yeah, I think our goal here is just to make sure that we've got all of that we're capturing everything that needs to be done by agencies and helping you, the agency, to make this, get this into your budget, get this into the priorities, because ultimately it's it has to come from the agencies. It can't come from the task force. Doesn't have their own kind of budget purse. So
Yep. Thanks, Nick.
yeah.
Thank you, Nick. So again, we are moving through the agenda here quickly. So Nick, will you go to the next slide, please? So we have a little bit of closeout on what's next. So we can go through that with Nick Leonard from DOE.
Yep. So we'll just round this out pretty quickly. If you go to the next slide, so there's I guess 3 things. So number 1, make sure that either you or your the official designee is ready to vote, and there's 2 votes. So you're voting to approve batch 1 and voting to release for public comment for batch 2, to make sure they're ready for that. Number 2 is, if you have an action plan in batch 3, make sure you are ready to present, less than 5 minutes, a couple slides. And then the third thing is just what Meredith talked about. Make sure that you are pulling from all this work that like your particular agency has done in this task force, and making sure those projects that you've identified are going into your FY24 budget request. Because if you don't put them in there, then they will not be funded. So you at least have to get them in there, and you can, then I think there'll be ways that I think we can highlight that the task force supports it, and hopefully elevate the priority. So those are the 3 things. And then if you go to the next slide, if you're just thinking about this action team, next steps, you see next task force meeting, what I talked about. But I think So in October, for this particular action team, I think we'll talk a little bit more about budget and making sure, you know, all of these action plans are kind of represented somehow in a budget. And then I think we're also leaving some space for updates on insurance action plans, and some conversation there. And if you go to the next slide, this is just kind of a summary of when we'll be seeing each other next. So a little more than a week. So on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 21st, full task force meeting, and then a couple of meetings in October. Back to you, Monty.
That makes it easy. Next slide, I think that's it. So we are ending 30 minutes early. We appreciate the time. Looks like Disney was very busy with meeting with colleagues in the region and coming up with new ideas. So it's very exciting out of this committee, out of this action team, that we have something to present on the insurance side. And with that, I will say good afternoon and thank you. And we will see you sometime next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.